right. So it's my pleasure to now introduce Larry Gaier from Active Life RX. He currently is serving in the role as an advisor to the CEO. He also is responsible in making sure that the product of Active Life RX, through the education funnel that they have, both online and in-person courses, that the quality is very high, and that the way that information gets out to people like you and me are of the highest quality. So Larry, thank you again for taking the time to speak on a very important topic today.
Thank you so much, man. It's really cool to be here.
The first question I want to ask is just if you can give us a little background about yourself, how you entered into the fitness space, and maybe speaking on your background of developing the skill of communication.
So I didn't know that it was a thing I should really start owning and paying attention to until, I don't know, the last 12 months rolled around, and more people started very, very straightforwardly telling me like, yeah, so how do you do that? And it was the first time that I really started to understand that, well, what seems to me like a very natural process is something that a lot of people struggle with intensely and want to pay really good money to understand how to do more effectively. And that was actually the first time that I understood what it means to be able to show up to work and whatever you do with boundless energy to do something that you would do for free that you just wouldn't tell anyone about, right? So that's recent, and I can't speak to my decision to start doing it because I think I've always been doing it, and I have kind of naturally been inclined in that direction. And it's only in the last year or so that I've started to wield it a little bit more deliberately. We can unpack that. With respect to my intro to the fitness space, the summer after high school, I got struck by a bolt of lightning, and I realized that the world is bigger than just high school. And over the course of 8 weeks before my first semester of college, I underwent a total revolution around what I valued. I stopped caring about all the time wasters that were occupying my life, and I started insatiably consuming everything I could around physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual performance. It was just, it's an obsession that is going faster now than it was going 12 years ago.
I think that shows a lot of insight into really who you are in your core to make that realization just the summer after your last year of high school. Like, I think you're probably light years ahead. You were light years ahead of me when I was that age, but also I think the majority of people, we don't really figure it out until those struck by lightning moments that happen way later on in life. So I think that just speaks to your consciousness and kind of the thought that you put into your life and what you want it to become, and learning to wield that skill of communication, I think is a very valuable one. And I'm looking forward to seeing how you apply it in different ways. So with that said, now you're in the fitness space, you're a trainer, and you're working with individuals and helping them develop better lifestyle habits, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, so that they can be more resilient human beings. When did you realize that you needed to wield then that skill carefully?
Love that question. I think it was probably the first time that I saw with perfect clarity, filled with passion, what someone needed to do. And I faced, yeah, maybe, I'll let you know. I don't really, it doesn't really, it sounds okay, but not really. And I was like, hold on, what do you mean, man? Like, I'm trying to save your life. Yeah. This is the thing. And they're just like, eh. And I was like, okay, it's not a them thing, it's a me thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was it specifically that helped you, like, you know, make that click over and realize, oh, it's me?
That wasn't the last time.
Okay. So it happened a lot.
Yes. So right after, well, it's kind of like, if you go, I've always thought that if everywhere you go, people treat you the same, and it's 10 different kinds of people that are treating you this way, that's not a society thing. That's a you thing. I'm not talking about like formal behavior where in like Japan, there's 5 different kinds of bowing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if everywhere you go, you're like this person's really difficult in conversation, or this person is just always this weird, everyone seems like they're so afraid or so this way or that way around me. Every time I talk, I don't know what's wrong with all these people. It's probably you, right? And so I think it probably took 4 or 5 clients not buying in to what was so clearly the thing I could so easily give you that would make this tremendous change in your life. And I was like, I have to figure out why I'm not getting them to do the thing that I want them to do. Gold is right in front of them, and I'm not selling free gold. That's a problem.
Yeah. So how do you now navigate that situation with communication and being effective with it?
The one thing that people have always told me I am very, very apparently is passionate. And so I think to figure out tactical communication, irrespective of where you're at, would be a mistake. No matter what, it's going to improve something. But it's going to be a mistake in that you'll end up building a bigger and bigger structure and a more complex structure that's on a shoddy foundation. So the real foundation to communication is your intent. The real foundation to communication is how much you care. The real foundation to communication is how ready, willing, and able you are to get vulnerable and empathize in a deep way, not just around, I get it, I want to have abs too, but in like well, why do you want abs in the first place? If you could start to relate to people on that level, communication becomes effortless.
But those conversations are not easy to have, especially given there's so many things that take away from our bandwidth as humans, right? We have the busyness of life. We have other responsibilities. We have the things that come up that may require us to kind of reserve our abilities to really be the best version of whatever that individual in front of us may need. How do you navigate that? How do you separate, no, this individual needs all of me right now, so I need to be right here, right now with this person?
A mantra that I kind of heard one time that's been extremely effective for me is, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. There's no one else I'd rather see. And the first time I used that was probably after I read some article around how to be more effective socially. And using that puts you in a place where you are forced to be intensely, intensely present. And the best results in anything you want to do come from the quality and the intensity of your presence and your focus in that presence, right? So by grounding yourself very, very firmly in the present moment with whatever you're dealing with and putting all of your focus into it, I mean, that's where things just start blossoming like crazy, because all people need to do is have one very, 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 very real and impactful flash of a moment where they believe that you see, hear, and understand them. And once that happens, the pathway is just open for your influence.
And the influence that you have on individuals is always in a way that's going to benefit them today, in the present, and also in the future. So I think that's such an important skill, that is communication. It's such an important thing to be able to use effectively with the purpose of impacting an individual positively. That's a really cool thing that you're able to do, and that you're doing for a lot of people, especially in the fitness space. So can you touch briefly on, from an organizational standpoint of being advisor to the executive staff of Active Life RX, how do you navigate the intricacies of clear communication in an organizational structure?
Yeah, that's a good question. And for listeners here, you're extremely gracious with describing me as advisor. I think that I'm just probably the best on the team at calling the CEO on his stuff. And I think that to whatever degree that's valuable for him pivoting his behavior, we'll leave it there. There are a lot of moving parts. Each of those moving parts are moving in different directions at different speeds. What we need to do as leaders then of an organization is effectively transmit a reality that we have in our heads that doesn't exist yet into other people's heads, so that they embody it and behave in a way that's congruent with the image that we've been able to transmit. Every single person in the world wants the same thing, and it's well-being. You might say, well, if this person wanted well-being, they wouldn't be smoking cigarettes. Well, have you considered that smoking cigarettes is actually a coping mechanism for the amount of stress they have? And they're actually trying to mitigate their stress with this coping mechanism so that they can achieve well-being. Well, what about the Wall Street guy who's like not seeing his kids and working 20 hours, even though he knows it? Well, why is he doing that? Is it because he's trying to do what he believes is going to set up a better future for him, his wife, and his kids down the road? But it's killing him. I get it, but he's sacrificing now for well-being later, or so he thinks, right? Well, what about the person who has 2 torn labrums and they can't stop doing the burpees? Why are they doing it? Why is it that they're going? It's certainly not making their shoulders better, which is certainly not conducive to well-being, but do they believe that the alternative to destroying their shoulders is actually going to make them feel worse than showing up and going as hard as they can, irrespective of their lousy shoulders? Everyone in the world is trying to achieve well-being, whether it's one of those 3 people that we described or the person who's sitting full lotus on a mountaintop, just blissed out, right? Everyone's after the same thing. And the greatest source of all conflict in the world, the only source of conflict in the world, is the fact that we all have different ideas about how to achieve it. Everyone in the world wants well-being. The source of all conflict in the world is because we all have different ideas about how to do it. Whether it's giving a 14-year-old kid a gun in the Congo, or it's being a Wall Street stock operator, or it's doing whatever you're doing with whatever sort of lousy farming practices, it's all because at the end of the day, we're trying to make decisions that are going to secure our survival and our well-being. And if we can all understand that at the root of all of our behavior, we all want well-being, then all we ever have to do whenever we're not sure about how to communicate is speak to what people's greatest interests are, which is their well-being.
Yeah.
And if we can relate whatever we want to have happen to their well-being, communication's been made. This whole, I think that we're making one of 2 different kinds of decisions. We're either making fear-based decisions, or we're making forward-thinking, inspired decisions. And what I think is a sticking point for the vast majority of people is that they don't know how to make that second kind because they're very, very preoccupied with survival, which, I mean, look at the situation. I understand why so many people are. But if we're preoccupied with survival, we don't have the energy freed up to pursue thriving and to pursue well-being and to pursue empathy. We can't possibly think about exercising empathy if we're preoccupied with our own survival. If we can start to understand that physiologically, there are very, very intense reactions that happen when we give to other people. When we communicate something that helps other people, we have a very, very immediate endocrine response that makes us feel good, and a neurochemical response that makes us feel really good. We are wired for altruism because altruism benefits all of society. So we're, of course, wired for selfishness. It's okay. You can't have a society if individuals don't value themselves enough to survive and thrive and then contribute. But the bigger picture that we're all deeply seeking is contribution and creating this kind of big connected moving thing. And that requires giving to each other, right? And I think if we can start to even lean into, I have none of the means right now, but that is the thing that I would love, our physiology will change such that the means will feel a little bit more accessible. The conversation will have a little bit more patience. We'll have a little bit more empathy.
You know, it's like each pool of energy or where you're getting that energy ultimately affect the levels of the others.
100%.
Yeah.
Perfectly said.
I mean, our resources are our internal ones, our emotional ones, our physical ones, they are finite any way you slice it up. Right. It's, you know, it's just not, we can't just plug into a wall and just get, you know, a fully charged battery and go at it again. It's like, sometimes those days don't happen. You and I can speak to that. Sometimes we're just hit with like, this is a lot, there's a lot going on, and we reach our capacity that way. In light of a lot of the issues that are coming up socially right now, when it comes to racism, when it comes to racial injustice that we're seeing so right in front of us today, what does this teach us about the tremendous value around communication?
One of my favorite things I've ever heard around communication is that the biggest mistake in communication is believing that it's been made. right?
Wow.
So yeah, that blew me away the first time I heard that. And I have not seen a better example of that than now. I have totally fallen on my face 5 or 6 times already since George Floyd died. I have fallen on my face sociologically so many times from trying to communicate, both outgoing and incoming, and just failing. And I need to stop treating this whole thing like a sprint, and I need to start treating it like a marathon, because there's a lot more deep and prolonged listening that I need to do if I'm going to have anywhere near enough information to make an educated decision. This really comes down to me saying, I know nothing. I need to shut my mouth, and I need to do a lot of listening.
Yeah.
So I think that what everyone is screaming right now is the half of communication that we don't give credit to very often, needs to be exercised intently right now. And very often we think that communication means, well, what am I saying? How am I saying it? Who am I saying it to? Is everyone listening? Does everyone hear me? Communication is contingent upon a person who is ready, willing, and eager and able to hear and be influenced. Right? So what everything is screaming to me right now is that I need to do the second half of it. I don't have no business telling anyone anything right now. The only thing I can do is actually ask people if they're willing to answer a question that I have. And until then, I need to just go back and I need to cross my legs and I need to just listen.
Yeah. That's such a challenge, right? Because we, being humans, we're so, like you mentioned, because of our compassion, because of our empathy and the way that we care intensely about other individuals, we want to take immediate action. We want to try and find a solution to the problem now. But I think what this is teaching us is that it's going to take a very long time to uproot and to really even unearth some of the challenges that have been just buried deep down in individuals and societies and communities for so long. We need to really pan out and just see things for what it really is, not to make excuses, not to justify things, not to hide things anymore or try to bury them further deeper, but we need to bring them up and just kind of see it for what it is and listen, get educated, and ultimately act. We need to move on the things that we know to be right.
I love that you talk about unearthing this stuff, because I think that there's a lot that, like you said, people are unwilling to recognize and that they're very inclined to justify. And I think one of the greatest questions that I'm still trying to answer for myself is, how can people who have been in longstanding positions of power and privilege benefit from relinquishing their leverage in society and giving that away? To what degree is it conducive to privileged people's well-being to equalize everything? I think that the reason why everything exists as it is so intensely right now is that no one's posing a clear answer for this, right? Either the people who are, they're not getting heard because structure is such that it's keeping that at bay. I think that if people in the highest positions of power, the most privileged people, sat and take as long as you want, this isn't going anywhere. How are we going to take the time to examine, how does me giving up all my stuff, all my privilege, all my power, how is that going to end up benefiting me? If people don't see that, no one's going to budge, because all of this are fear-based decisions to hold on to what they already have, because it's conducive to my survival and well-being to have. Having not, it's very difficult to wrap your head around that. So if we can start to paint that picture, I think people are going to start to loosen their grip a little bit more, but it has to be clear and it has to be concrete. Yeah,
absolutely. Because we're so fixed on kind of quantitative data to try and understand and put value to who we are in society. What you're saying is to take a qualitative metric that is something that you feel to know is the right thing to do, acting on that, whether that's relinquishing privilege or power that's been given to you by societal norms or structures that we're a part of, and allowing that to really benefit you, like in your inside, internally, and allowing that to start to to create change and to develop a wider frame of thinking so that you can become a better person if we could potentially act that way.
This is not to undermine the value and the importance of these kind of quantitative reasoning that you're talking about here. So to be clear, the only reason you need resources is because there's something that you want to do. You need just enough resources to live. After that, it's like, well, I got all this leisure time. That's the benefit of civilization. What do I want to do now that's bigger than just day-to-day stuff? It's the only reason you need more resources. So I've traveled the world with a backpack, a guitar, very little money in my bank account, and eating sardines out of the cans for a long time. Easily the most peaceful I've ever been for a year straight. Some of the most joy I've ever had in a 1 year period has been when I had almost nothing. I've been there. That said, I did a whole bunch of learning and I gained a whole bunch of clarity around aspiration. And now I know that I have bigger systems to build and I have bigger things to do and that I want to do to create this kind of impact, which is going to require human resources, financial resources, material resources. So I don't want to tell everyone, hey, give away all your stuff and eat sardines out of a can.
Right.
You're going to need stuff and people are going to want a way to measure that for themselves so that they know I need this to achieve this. But for sure, you can feel amazingly well, irrespective of how much you have.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's something that a lot of people understand to be true.
We may know it when we say it, but to act on it and to really believe that is
all right, dude, give me
totally
it all.
different. Yeah.
I'll take your sweater and your car and the AirPods, please, because I don't have any. Just give me it.
Yeah.
It's people,
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. What can we all do to better our communication when it comes to social injustices, when it comes to our overall health and wellness, our well-being as humans? What can we do in using communication to benefit all of that?
Imagine a tribe of 150, and I understand that they're not analogous because there are 7 billion people in the world just working here. Got a tribe of 150. In that group of 150 people, there are going to be some who communicate extremely effectively and articulately, and there will be others who cannot. Irrespective of how effectively they communicate, everyone in that tribe of 150 knows how the show goes. Everyone knows that we all need to eat, and here's how we get it, and here's how we divvy it up, and this is how we talk to the elders, and this is what time we start the fire, and this is what time we get up and start doing this thing in the morning. And for the people who can't communicate well verbally, from a nonverbal perspective, the way that they're showing up and the quality of their presence and their behavior indicates that values have been thoroughly communicated. Right? So it's how we show up in our behavior that we're demonstrating the efficacy of how values have been communicated. Right? So the question is, well, what do we do about that super small pot? Because now we're talking about these isolated pockets of values. Next door neighbor tribe could have totally different values from this one. And that's where, right? So this is really about getting on the same page across the entire planet around global values. And we're talking about a respect for Earth and for like natural cycle and for life and death and how we treat people and otherness and the illusion thereof, right? And understanding that culture doesn't actually exist to serve individuals. Culture exists to serve itself. Culture is actually a force of itself, and culture actually uses individuals to fulfill culture. So if we as individuals can understand, well, I'm in a cultural current right now. I'm part of that. The current's going this way. What do I and we want to do with that? To what degree am I ready, willing, and able to exert effort and energy to not just go with the cultural current that's always been? Because tradition exists to serve itself. It's what your ancestors did. It's not what you can, should, or have to be doing, right? And so if we can start to consciously examine for ourselves, what am I doing? How does it serve me? How does it serve the person next to me? Am I going to do this, or am I going to watch? Like, can you watch it? I don't know if you eat animals, but have you ever, you don't have to, these are rhetorical questions. Have you ever killed an animal that you've eaten? Have you ever watched an animal be killed that you've eaten? our dissociation and our separation from these things is why behaviors that don't serve a collective exist. Because if we watch it happen and we feel it happen, if we feel the effects of our behavior as it permeates everything else, we're way less inclined to behave unconsciously and impulsively, right? To the degree to which we can bring the effects of our behavior on the rest of the planet and other people into our consciousness is the degree to which we can create this more pervasive system of values that has us all just behaving better and for each other and with each other in such a way that no one actually needs to suffer, and that the standard of well-being can skyrocket.
Yeah. So we need what you're saying is we need to get more finely tuned with the values that make us human.
100%, man. And after that, then once we start, the trouble is though, it's like, how do you take 7 billion people who all want well-being and have these deeply ingrained ideas, cultural grooves around how to achieve it, right? And effectively communicate that, hey, the way that you and your ancestors have been doing this don't do this anymore. Do it this way. Well, I am probably never going to see the end of this. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. But what I've reconciled is that with my communication, I'm going to move the thing as far as I can, as fast as I can while I'm still here, because it has to move in that direction.
Thank you so much for sharing some insight into the value of this very important skill that, especially now, is going to be very important in the way that we utilize it. That is communication. If people want to reach out to you, Larry, if they have questions about better communication, whether that's from the fitness perspective or even just to communicate emotionally or to make sure that their relationships with people of their communities are strengthened, where can they find you, or how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Instagram's a good place, and that's Larry_the_human, with no other punctuation, Larry_the_human. And I would love to hear from you. I love that you talk about just emotional communication, because I fervently believe that the number one public health threat right now is unresolved trauma that we just never have effectively communicated, and that we internalized from a compulsive miscommunication from the people that we were around. So it really is the fabric of all of our progress, our ability to communicate. So I would love to hear from you guys, and I'd love to chop it up.
Awesome. Very cool. And so like
Daniel,
I mentioned,
thanks so much, man.
Absolutely. No, I hope to do this again soon. As I mentioned when we started, if anybody has any questions as far as the incredible effort that Active Life RX is currently doing in serving the fitness demographic and the fitness space, and the ways that they're helping people stay out of pain so that they can continue to do the things that they love inside and outside of the gym, please go ahead and reach out to Larry, the entire Active Life RX staff. You can reach out to them as well. They're helping thousands of people. I myself being able to experience some of the positive benefits of being associated with their team. So I strongly urge you guys to check them out. Larry, thanks again so much. And again, I look forward to doing this again soon. All right, man.
All right, man. I'll see you out there.